All right, I do see that it is 2:31, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Perfect. Okay, just welcoming all. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy spring. This is our sixth meeting on March 30th, and we're so excited to welcome you all, new and returning members. We have a full agenda for everyone today, and we're very, very much excited to interact and engage with all of you this afternoon. As you are coming in, just wanted to share some housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. We kindly ask you to be mindful of your background noise. And we also kindly ask you to adjust your Zoom name to add your affiliation next to it, so we have an idea of who we have in this virtual room. This is a public meeting, so we do tend to have a large number of participants. To support with questions for our great presenters, please encourage you to raise your hand. You can do that by going into the reaction feature on your Zoom control box. You can raise your virtual hand. You can also chat in questions. When you do chat questions, please make sure that you send them to everyone. That will allow us to see it and make sure that we have it. And I see some of you are already saying hello via the chat. We welcome greetings. Thank you so much. I see Tim, Tammy, Deneen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great meeting for all of you today. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact my colleague Demry. She's supporting us, our Zoom host today. Here is today's agenda. As mentioned, we have great content for all of you. We'll start with an ONC presentation on the social determinants of health technical integration framework. And then from there, we're going to hear from two amazing pilot sites, Alliance Chicago and with its partners, Trapezy 360 Health and Medical Home Network, followed by the University of Texas at Austin. From there, we're going to have some time to discuss and have an open Q&A to ensure that the audience gets to interact with the presenters, and we share some opportunities and announcements with all of you. And then I will wrap us up in the last 5 minutes of today's call. Thank you again for joining us. As part of our housekeeping, just want to remind everyone about our Gravity Project antitrust practices. We do encourage to please comply fully with federal and state antitrust practices. As a reminder, Gravity Project is agnostic to the systems and tools used to collect, exchange, aggregate, and analyze social care data. We're not promoting any specific solution. This is a forum to collaborate and learn from each other. And without further ado, I want to call in Sheetal Shah, who is our EMI Advisors Consultant, supporting today's ONC presentation on the social determinants of health technical integration framework. Can you hear us, Sheetal?
Hi, Gabby. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
thank you
perfect.
So much.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. If we go to, and Gabby, I'll just say next slide to help drive. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving us the opportunity to share our draft proposed SDOH technical integration framework for your feedback. My name's Sheetal, and I'm with EMI Advisors. And for this overview, we wanted to share some background on the framework, provide the purpose, and kind of orient you to the current draft outline, as well as share the timeline for framework development and hopefully for your feedback. Just please note that we aren't taking live feedback on the call today, since we only have about 15 minutes, but we did want to provide you with the overview, and then we'll be super grateful for your feedback after today. Next slide, please. So our colleagues at ONC wanted to put together a framework or a resource that would be really helpful to developers and implementers of social care data integration projects by providing step-by-step guidance for execution, management, and communications. And we're so excited to be sharing this with you all today on the Gravity Pilots Affinity group. We were really excited to join this meeting, to request your feedback as you are all currently doing the work. hard work to implement and pilot these standards and implementation guides in your communities. We expect that this framework can help inform the interoperability standards advisory and the current tags for SDOH. And lastly, we just want to note that this is a draft outline and not intended for public distribution at this time, but definitely wanted to get it in front of you all so we could hopefully garner your feedback and input into this resource. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we wanted to share with you all our high-level timeline for the framework development. So today, folks will have the current draft outline of the framework. We are asking that session attendees to submit written feedback by April 13th. So that would be 2 weeks from today. And our goal in April, the EMI team will be analyzing the feedback that we receive from folks, taking the framework from what is currently just a draft outline to a more robust resource. And then we've allotted time, for refining graphics as well, with the goal of hitting giving this back to ONC so it can kind of go into their own review and feedback cycle by mid-May. And then our hope is after that is that, the tool will be finalized by the end of July. So just wanted to give folks the kind of current timeline for this development. And then again, would be super grateful for folks to be able to submit their written feedback after today's call 2 weeks from today by April 13th. Next slide, please. Okay, so on this slide, we wanted to give folks, just show you kind of the current draft has been informed by basically a few resources at this point. So first on the left is the PDMP EHR integration and clinical decision support framework. This resource, the resource structure has helped inform our framework outline. And then we know folks might already be familiar with this, but in case it's helpful, we've also referenced the ONC SDOH information toolkit and the foundational elements from this toolkit throughout our outline as well. And then a part of this process is that, we're requesting stakeholder feedback to the outline. So joining, this group's meeting, we hope we can receive your feedback as well as, additional groups that we've been meeting with who are doing this work currently. Next slide. And yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm sure a lot of folks on the call today are familiar with the toolkit, but in case a refresher is helpful, ONC with the support of EMI convened a panel of technical experts in 2020. And the toolkit helps identify approaches to advance SDOH information exchange goals, like through a foundational elements framework. And so it's intended to provide information on the SDOH landscape to a broad set of stakeholders at all experience levels, as well as, providing spotlights on specific communities and efforts that are happening nationally, as well as sharing a really valuable set of guiding questions and resources to support implementation work. So it was really important to us that as we develop this framework, we wanted to be referencing this other helpful resource that ONC's developed as well. If we go to the next slide, and just to give you guys a view of the specific foundational elements, and just to mention again, and apologize if this is repetitive to folks, the framework is not a one-size-fits-all approach, but rather a conceptual framework to help guide the planning, design, and implementation and evaluation of SDOH information exchange initiatives. And the foundational elements, as folks may already be familiar with this tool, inform each other, and we believe, the governance intersects with all of the other foundational elements, and different stakeholders can prioritize and sequence their focus on the foundational elements as appropriate. So again, really wanted to just circle back to this and let folks know that, you'll see throughout our framework outline that we've tried to align to this, and we'll be asking for your feedback on, how we've approached that and if that is matching your implementation expertise. If we go to the next slide. So now I'll quickly just breeze through our draft outline, just to orient you to the phases at a really high level so you can preview it, see how it's organized, and yeah, great. Thanks, Gabby. So these are the phases. So the SDOH technical integration framework has been developed with 6 phases that you can see listed on this slide. These phases at a really high level do align to the other resource that I mentioned, the PDMP integration and CDS framework. And then within each phase, though, is an outline of the steps that, we hope as an outline help orient implementers and developers who might be supporting, SDOH information exchange initiatives. So again, would love your review and feedback on that. And as implementers of these projects currently, we want to know if these steps within the phases, are matching your direct experience and expertise implementing these initiatives currently. If we go to the next slide. So here's just an example or a preview of like what's in the planning phase. You can see on this slide, there's a total of 5 steps that are within the planning phase. So I won't go through all of it, just wanted you to see kind of an example of it. If we go to the next slide. Similarly, on the next slide is a example of the steps that would be under the development phase, and just to show you some of the examples of the higher level steps, but again, wanting to ensure that this is grounded in the experience of folks implementing SDOH information exchange initiatives. And so that's what we'll be requesting your written feedback on after the call. If we go to the next slide, here's another preview example for testing. And then if we quickly go to the next slide, we wanted to show the example then of, so you've seen the phases, you've seen some of the examples of the steps, and then this is an example of some of the sub-steps. So within each of the steps, we have what we're calling sub-steps. And here you can see right on the screen, we've tried to align it to certain foundational elements that are found in the ONC SDOH information toolkit. And again, does this match what you're currently experiencing from an implementation perspective? And, knowing what you know today, what is the most valuable step-by-step guidance that would help you or your colleagues manage and execute these initiatives? And so really looking forward to receiving some feedback from you all on that. And then on the next slide. So just lastly, as folks are reviewing, we have, I think, circulated the more robust outline that has, the phases, the steps, and the more detailed sub-steps. We would love for you to be thinking about, does this outline provide the right appropriate order of the steps based on your expertise? What's the detailed information that could be included to really support implementers taking on and piloting and implementing these initiatives? We want to ensure, of course, too, does this information, reflect equitable processes in the design and implementation of these initiatives? And then are there other resources or guides that you've been using or pointing to help in, your work? And then lastly, of course, as we've developed the ONC SDOH toolkit, are there elements that we may have missed that are important in the consideration of this work if someone were to use this guide? So I think oh, sorry, Gabby, I think we have one more slide. I apologize. So we go to the next slide. Yeah, so again, just so grateful to be on the call today and to be able to share this draft outline with folks. We would love and be so grateful for the written feedback to the more detailed draft that folks have, to Sarah Bahal on our team by Thursday, April 13th. So that's 2 weeks from today. And of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to join the call today, to inform you about this framework, and really looking forward to hopefully receiving some of your feedback and expertise on it. I'll pause there and see if there's any quick questions.
Hi, Chito. Thank you so much. And, I think today's presentation, it is a little bit of a teaser. So just to clarify for some of our audience who are just joining us, Chito just reviewed the outline. As part of our follow-up email, you will receive a full deck, and we kindly ask for that written feedback. There is a question a little bit about the legal documents referred on one of the slides that you presented, Sheetal. I'm not sure if that is appropriate to answer now, or will you prefer to route via email? Just wanted to check in.
Yeah, Lucy, if you don't mind, if you want to send us, we can do that via email if that's okay. I don't want to take up time for the group. I know you have a packed agenda.
That's fine. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And all of you are, continuing to be really our feedback and support for this work. And we really want to give you time to digest, as well as quick note to mention that today's recording will be posted on Confluence for anyone that would like to go back and check on that. Awesome. Thank you, Sheetal, for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate you and the rest of the EMI and ONC team. And without further ado, we're gonna send in, if you have any questions, we do have our wonderful colleagues at ONC contact information here. And I believe there's also, yes, a Health IT newsletter to stay up to date with all of the great announcements. Okay, and as we're transitioning, today's meeting will be centered around two specific pilot presentations, and I have the honor to introduce them. I see we have, some people joining us. So just as a friendly reminder and housekeeping, we are recording today's call. We kindly ask you to be mindful of your background. We welcome questions throughout the chat for our presenters, as well as you can virtually raise your hand so we can, have you speak and ask your question live. For purposes of, logistics, we will address the questions towards the end of each presentation, just to allow enough time for all speakers. All right, without further ado, I want to recap for some of our new, for the people that might be joining for the first time. This is our Gravity Project 3-tier piloting approach, where it's meant to provide an incremental tiers for testing the gravity standards, which includes the terminology and the technical standards, and entities may participate at any tier. The minimum requirement is to be able to use the gravity terminology, coded terminology in your pilot activities. And the primary focus of our fire pilots is being able to utilize the gravity social determinants of health data model and exchange standards. We have two sites that are doing that. Today we'll be presenting on their efforts. So thankfully, we do have a lot of support from the ONC and HL7 teams. A corporate agreement was executed early last year. We're in 2023, and it supported two sites. Alliance Chicago is one of those sites, and they will be presenting today on their current efforts for piloting and implementation of the Gravity IG STU2 at a site in Chicago. And additionally, you will have presenters from the University of Texas at Austin who received the 2021 ONC LEAP Award, and LEAP stands for Leading Edge Acceleration Projects. Just to prep them up, Alliance Chicago will present on their experience along with their partners, representatives from Trapezy 360 Health, and a community-based organization called Medical Home Network. And they are testing the gravity aspects of the Gravity IG, so they are falling into tier 3. For the University of Texas at Austin, they will present on their FireShip pilot, which is a fire-based integration of a patient engagement technology and social and health information platform to allow real-time care coordination between social and healthcare providers. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our first pilot presenters. And Nicole, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gabby. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present today on our Gravity pilot work to date, and also to EMI advisors for all of their support. My name is Nicole Padula. I'll be presenting with my colleague, Jeremy Carr from Alliance Chicago, Allison Halverson from our FQHC partner, Tapestry 360 Health, and Sebastian Payton from our CBO partner, Medical Home Network. So next slide, please. So just a little bit about Alliance Chicago. First, we are a health center controlled network supporting about 80 health centers across the US with a mission of improving personal, community, and public health through innovative collaboration. And that's our Gravity pilot team at Alliance Chicago, myself serving as project manager for the effort, Jeremy Carr, who's serving as our technical lead, Shannon Pohl, our project lead and clinical subject matter expert, and Andrew Hamilton, our project sponsor and clinical subject matter expert as well. Now I will turn things over to Allison to hear a bit about our FQHC partner, Tapestry 360 Health.
Thanks, Nicole. My name is Allison, or Allie. I'm the Director of Population Health at Tapestry 360 Health. Among other things, I support the team of care coordinators whose workflow we'll be talking through today. Mary Dudek is our Clinical Director of Social Determinants of Health, as well as our provider champion for our care management program. She wasn't able to be here today, but did help spearhead our involvement in this project. Tapestry 360 Health is in FQHC on the north side of Chicago. We have 7 community health sites, 7 school-based health centers, and 2 integrated care sites where we partner with organizations, excuse me, serving people with significant mental illness to provide integrated primary care. Our mission is to improve the well-being of the communities we serve by providing accessible, high-quality care. And I will pass it over to Sebastian to introduce the Medical Home Network.
Well, hey, thank you. Well, the Cliff Notes Medical Home Network, we started out locally in Chicago, primarily focusing on the south side of Chicago. We were a Medicaid ACO. And I guess two of the guiding principles of MHN, just to simplify it a bit, is we really believe that care management should be done at the local level. Care management should be done at the FQHC level. And we also do our best to collect social determinants of health. We believe that collecting that data, in addition to, say, claims, pharmacy, ADT services, and you package that all together, you can identify high-risk patients, hopefully prior to them leading to complications, and at local care level can help then take it from there. That's where we started, but we've expanded rapidly in the last few years. We're now in, oh goodness, 8 or 9 different markets. We're pretty much a national company at this point. So it's been exciting to see that happen. I specifically work on the tech ops department within that company. It is the data engineering team, and it really focuses on extracting and cleaning up data and putting it into a centralized warehouse, and then delivering that data either internally or externally. And I've had the pleasure to work with a vendor for this project called Great Data Mines. They really helped us build the pipelines to communicate data from the MHN Connect application to the Athena EMR. More on that in a bit, but I think that's it for me right now. I'll pass it on over to Nicole.
Great. Thank you, Sebastian and Allie. So just a little bit of background on our pilot. We are participating as a pilot tier 3 site, as Gabby said. We'll be facilitating a fire data exchange between Tapestry 360 Health and Medical Home Network with a current and initial focus on use case 1, using a unidirectional fire data exchange to document SDOH in a patient encounter. And then a future focus on use case 2, using a bidirectional fire data exchange to document and track interventions to completion. So we started this work in March of last year, and we hope to complete the unidirectional fire data exchange in May of this year. This pilot is currently in the active development stage, which we will talk about a little bit later. So we don't have pilot results to share quite yet, but we'll be reviewing all of our work to date and then also our future plans as well. And finally, our business driver here is achieving health equity and improving health overall by addressing social determinants of health. Next slide, please. So just some notes on our pilot ecosystem. Our FQHC partner, TAP 360, uses Athena Practice EHR, hosted by Alliance Chicago. And then our CBO partner, Medical Home Network, uses a cloud-based portal application called MHN Connect. Next slide, please. So for this pilot, we will be focusing on the SDOH domain of food insecurity, exchanging food insecurity screening information with the assigned LOINC codes identified here. And for the exchange standards, we'll be invoking our fire observation and fire patient search. Next slide. We've really enacted a human-centered design approach in this work, following a path of discovery, design, development, testing, and deployment. And we've laid out our presentation today in that format. So we'll kind of dive into the specifics of those on the next few slides. Great. So first in the discovery phase. So we went through several workflow discovery sessions with both Tapestry 360 and Medical Home Network, along with our teams at Alliance Chicago. And from those, the group elected to focus efforts around a care coordination workflow where a Tapestry 360 care coordinator for the pilot is completing a detailed health risk assessment on patients attributed to Tapestry 360 under county care, which is a managed healthcare plan in Illinois. The HRA that's being completed includes a broad array of SDOH questions, information on housing, transportation, food, and social supports and needs. So after reviewing the HRA itself and the care coordination workflows, the team elected to focus on the domain of food insecurity, as we mentioned, specifically the 2 food insecurity questions listed here from the HRA. So within the past 12 months, we were worried whether our food would run out before we got money to buy more. And question 2, within the past 12 months, the food we bought just didn't last and we didn't have money to get more. And each of those has a response scale of often true, sometimes true, and never true. Next slide, please. So after that initial discovery work was completed and we had agreed on our SDOH domain of focus, we began work on the design phase, where we worked with the team to create a new workflow for that unidirectional fire exchange. And we also designed custom EHR content at Alliance for the Tapestry 360 coordinator to use in the pilot, which we'll share in the next couple of slides as well. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are going to show the workflow that we came up with for the unidirectional data exchange. And just a little point of orientation here, anything in blue is referring to Tapestry 360 Health work in the Athena Practice EHR, and anything in green is Medical Home Network work performed in MHN Connect. So first step on the Tapestry side, a lead care coordinator is assigning out the patients to their respective care coordinators to perform some initial outreach. Second step, that selected care coordinator is going into and creating a new patient chart for their assigned patient if there isn't one already created in Athena Practice EHR. Next slide, please. So next, the care coordinator is contacting their assigned patient and performing that health risk assessment that we mentioned previously, and that's done in the MHN Connect application. And following completion of the HRA, fire observation will be used to transmit the food insecurity data from MHN Connect to Athena Practice EHR, creating a fire message on a selected desktop that we'll be using for this pilot. And then the Tapestry 360 care coordinator is going to locate the fire message and opens the encounter, and then we'll add the EHR form specifically designed for this pilot. And you can see a mock-up of that content there on the bottom right, where the care coordinator can review the food insecurity data transmitted from the fire message. So the responses to those 2 food insecurity questions we shared earlier. Next slide, please. So next, the care coordinator identifies whether that patient's responses to the food insecurity questions indicate that they are food insecure, and then documents the remainder of care coordination outreach using that EHR form. And that form also includes an element of clinical decision support that you can see kind of a little snapshot here, where that red text will appear along with a checkbox recommending a food resource referral if the data transmitted in the fire message indicates food insecurity. And by that, we mean either a response of often true or sometimes true to either of those 2 questions. So the care coordinator can use that decision support to mark the checkbox indicating the patient should be referred to Chai Fresh, which is a community organization providing food resources in Chicago. And just to note, the referral itself is actually entered in the MHN Connect system that green box there is referring to. So the checkbox in Athena Practice is really serving as that clinical decision support tool to encourage the user to go back and enter that referral in MHN Connect. And then finally, the encounter is signed. So this is a very high level overview of the workflow. So now I'm going to pass things over to Sebastian and then to Jeremy to kind of get into the technical weeds a little bit more. So Sebastian.
Okay, well, this is the fun part for me, and I was told I could take a little bit of time, so bear with me. As was already outlined, you have a user in MHN Connect 2.0 filling out an HRA, and we need to make sure that that information gets all the way to Athena. So there's a number of hands, a number of teams involved in all of that, and all it really starts with is, okay, so a user enters something in the front end in MHN Connect 2.0, then that's recorded in the application's backend. So there's already two teams that you have to deal with just internal to MHN Connect itself. You have the application team itself, and then you have Tech Ops, which is the data engineering team. So what the application team is going to do for us is they're going to build or reuse a table that already exists, and they're going to write an entry. For those of you who may be a little bit less technical, just think of a row in a spreadsheet. They're going to write an entry to that table that says, hey, this assessment just got done. And then Tech Ops from there, they're going to look at that table, they're going to watch it. And the moment that they see something going on, I'm like, okay, well, let me go look at that HRA. Let me go see who that is for. And if it satisfies multiple criteria, we'll do something with it. So that criteria needs to be like, well, is it adult or pediatric HRA? There's multiple different kinds of HRAs. We don't want to use all of them, just those. Is it done by Tapestry 360, that specific member? If it satisfies all of these criteria that we're checking, we'll then take it from the application's backend all the way to Tech Ops' backend and make sure it's ready to go. Now, from there, we have to then get it over to Great Data Mines. That's kind of like the section in blue, who then will make sure that it gets over to Athena. So what we're doing is we're building this process in Python that just automatically takes that data and delivers it to Great Data Mines in the form of a JSON object, if you're familiar with that. The questions and answers themselves will be in the form of a FHIR object, or a FHIR syntax rather, so that it's easier on Great Data Mines to process. And then from there, it's out of Tech Ops' hands and it's in Great Data Mines. So now we're on to this third team that's taking care of data. So what they're doing is like, okay, they take this HRA information, right? And they need to make sure that it gets into Athena. So in order to make sure that it lands in the correct spot, what they have to do is they have to go say, hey, Athena, I've got this member's first name, their last name, and their date of birth. What I need is their member number so I can make sure it lands in the right spot. So there's an API call to go get that from the EMR. Great Data Mines then packages that with the food insecurity questions and then goes ahead and delivers that over to Athena, which at that point, everything's done. It's in the EMR. So point being, you've got multiple teams here and multiple like sections that have to happen. But that at a very high level, that's the pipeline. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jeremy.
Great, thank you. There we go. So we just wanted to provide a sample of the FHIR artifacts for the observations. As Nicole mentioned, there are two observations that are being passed back to Athena Practice. And so we just wanted to show an example of both of them here. So one on the left, one on the right. The first one on the left, you'll see contains the information for the food worry. This is the actual field that's being returned back to us. It does have the LOINC code defined there, as well as we are including the coding for the Athena Practice specific coding, which will help with the mapping on the data coming back in. It does include the patient ID right in the middle there. And this is actually assuming that the system on the MHN side already has this patient ID. So there will be some scenarios where there has been previous interaction that they have obtained and stored off the patient ID from our system into their system, and they can just pass it directly. Or if they don't have it, they would be able to do a search using the patient information with the first name, last name, date of birth, and search to identify what that patient ID is to complete the subject information for the patient. The practitioner's set value that we have set up with agreement with TAP 360. So this is actually going to define a specific practitioner that all the data will be assigned to when it comes back into the system. And then at the very bottom, it actually has the values of the responses. So this one on the left has a sometimes true, and that actually does have its own specific LOINC code of LA6729-3. So these are coded elements for the answers that are coming back into the system. So we just wanted to give a high level example of what the observation post message would look like. And we can go to the next slide. I believe that's going back to Nicole.
Yep. Thank you both. Great. So as we mentioned, we are still very much in the active development stage now, and we will continue to engage and coordinate with the Gravity team, project team moving forward to kind of provide more specific feedback on the artifacts we just shared. And then in terms of internal testing, after the technical establishment of the fire exchange, users are going to be performing extensive testing of the connectivity itself and of the clinical content designed for the project, invoking the technical integration testing workflows based on kind of lessons learned from previous fire integration projects, as well as trying to enact the same real-world patient workflows used by the Tapestry 360 care coordinators. So on the MHN side, they're going to be confirming the fire message trigger of the food insecurity data from the HRA. And then on the Tapestry 360 side, Athena practice side, we will confirm receipt of the fire message, and then obviously doing end-to-end workflow testing as well. Next slide, please. So finally, that takes us to deployment. So the deployment stage will involve training and communication for all of our staff affected by the workflow optimization. So ensuring the care coordinator knows which EHR interface screen to locate the fire message on, and then also ensuring that they know how to use the clinical content that we've developed for this project, including that clinical decision support prompt. And then following the go live, the Alliance Chicago team will continue to provide support and monitoring, as well as receive feedback to foster any future integration work. Next slide, please. And then this slide just gets into a little bit more detail on our pilot timeline. So as we mentioned previously, you'll see we are currently working in the development stage. And as soon as that's finished, we'll proceed on to extensive testing and deployment, hoping to deploy in May of 2023 this year. Next slide, please. So we wanted to share some of our accomplishments on this work to date. First, identifying our community-based organization partner for this work really proved to be a challenge. So we were really thrilled when Medical Home Network agreed to participate in this work. And then obviously just for the great collaboration between our two partners, Tapestry 360 and MHN. Also, we really hope to use this project to demonstrate the value of a decision support alert for how to act on the information from that food insecurity fire message. We know that there's a significant degree of cognitive burden, particularly amongst patient-facing healthcare workers. So hopefully this is just one small step to alleviate that. And then finally, ultimately, we believe this project will serve as an important first step in improving the communication of critical SDOH data for improved care coordination for the patients that we serve. Next slide, please. So now a little bit about our lessons learned, particularly around our CBO recruitment challenges that I alluded to earlier. So one of the initial challenges that we faced early on in this project that really affected our timelines was CBO recruitment. So several community-based organizations indicated strong interest in the Gravity pilot, but just expressed major bandwidth and resourcing issues to kind of adequately support the work, particularly at the end of the year when we were doing a lot of our outreach. So after many rounds of outreach, we were really thrilled to coordinate the partnership between MHN and Tapestry 360. And then if you go to the next slide, Sebastian's going to talk us through some of the lessons learned and kind of additional technical work on the MHN side. So Sebastian?
Oh, sure. I've been thinking about this, and the biggest lesson learned, I think, is mainly just that it all really takes a lot more time than we initially realized. Like originally we were targeting hopefully to be done with this in March, but one of the things that we found is we want to set up this pipeline. We want it to be scalable so that we could build it and be able to send data to other EMRs or whatnot. So making sure that all of these different departments are in alignment, it just takes a lot of time. For example, the application team on MHN Connect's side of the aisle, they have a set release schedule. They only release like once every month. If there's delay, it could be a month and a half. And so getting the work that we need from them in order to set up this pipeline, it just took a moment to get that done. And then we, as tech ops, have our own release schedule. There's great data mines that we have to coordinate. We have to coordinate with Tapestry. And so just making sure we're coordinating with everybody, making sure that everything's set up in such a way that it will scale and be used for future projects, it will take an amount of time. And so when we eventually get to the point where we want to consider a bidirectional exchange, that in and of itself will take a lot of time, perhaps more. I'd say that's probably the biggest lesson learned there. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to the next person.
Great. And you can go to the next slide, Gabby. Thanks. And just to echo what Sebastian said, I would agree. I think everyone on the team would agree that things have just taken a little bit longer than anticipated, but we also had some kind of technical lessons learned and prerequisites to complete on the Alliance Chicago side in order to proceed with the exchange. So first, those 2 food insecurity questions that we're exchanging data around, we had to request our EHR vendor, Athena Health, actually assign the LOINC codes to them as they weren't previously assigned. And then we at Alliance Chicago have to actually install the EHR updates to the Athena practice database to install those LOINC code updates to Tapestry 360's EHR database. And then finally, our work at the informatics team designing and developing the EHR content that's going to be used in the workflow. So that piece of clinical content that we shared screenshots of earlier, that the care coordinator is documenting the remainder of the encounter in Athena practice. Next slide, please. So our path forward. So beyond this initial unidirectional fire exchange, like we mentioned, we hope to deploy a bidirectional exchange. However, there are some not so insignificant technical considerations. First and foremost, Tapestry 360 Health is in the process of transitioning EHR vendors with a go live scheduled for later this summer. Medical Home Network has not yet performed an exchange with that new vendor, but initial kind of technical discovery shows kind of similar work stream tasks for that. And really, although that EHR transition might present some kind of nuanced challenges in implementing the new bidirectional exchange, we hope to address those to enact the bidirectional exchange to automate the referral for food resources. Next slide, please. We also hope to apply our lessons learned from this pilot to future integration work, including our work on the Leap in Health IT project, where Alliance Chicago is partnering with Heartland Alliance Health, a community health center, and Chicago House, which is a community-based homeless service organization, to address health equity and SDOH for patients experiencing homelessness. And finally, our last slide, we've just shared some resources and references. And so we'll end there just with a note of gratitude to this group as a whole for the support and also to EMI advisors. So any questions? I think folks have been kind of answering them in the chat, but happy to answer any additional.
First of all, thank you all so much for such a wonderful and detailed presentation. I did see a few questions in the chat that have been answered. There is one outstanding, and we do have a few minutes to go over it. Lucy's asking, are there any contracts among the providers in the care network in this fire project? If so, who signs them, and were there any barriers here or there in the network?
So I can take a first pass at that one. I'm not familiar with any contracts, so I don't have any answers on who would be signing them, but we can certainly take that back. We don't have any for this project, at least.
And if I can add a little bit, this was a corporate agreement. So I know you had some, agreement and project agreement, I would say.
Correct.
Great. Awesome. I do see another question here from Teresa.
So Gabrielle, what does project agreement actually mean? Is this a legal document, a binding what is that? What is the scope of that and who signs it?
And you're specifically asking about the Alliance Chicago pilot, Lucy, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm happy, from a project management perspective. So the ONC HL7 corporate agreement was a contractual document between your Gravity project and ONC and HL7 to support the test of the Gravity fire IG. And that, you know, until the scope of it was for up to two pilot sites to do real world testing of the IG. So, you know, that each site, in this case,
Oh, wait a
Alliance
second. I'm sorry. I guess I'm interested in whether there's any legal documents connecting all of the actors that we've just been introduced to in this pilot, Alliance Chicago.
So a
Are
little
there
more
any-
into the actual health system and CBL. So is there any legal binding documents, Nicole and team, between Trapezy 360 and Medical Home Network? From like a, you know, higher level care coordination perspective?
Exactly. Thank you.
So I would say outside of this project, there are, and maybe folks from Tapestry or MHN could speak to that more, but that might be one that we could take back and kind of get back with you with kind of specifics around them. But outside of this project, there are agreements in place.
Thank you. I guess from the point of view of people who haven't done this ever, the legal connections among the parties is an element that could be discussed, however briefly. There are legal documents. Call us and we'll tell you what they are. We'll give you templates. We'll tell you what has to be covered, but something to introduce the idea that there do need to be legal connections, or it's a question, do there need to be legal connections among the parties to this wonderful project? Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you, Lucy.
Lucy. This is Courtney Baldridge from US Aging. And I know on our side, when we deal with network work and referring, certainly there are legal contracts and plenty of obligations, as well as to go to Daniel Stein's favorite topic, consent. Not only consent as it relates to sharing information for a consumer, but also consent in terms of where that third-party vendor, you know, if you've got a CBO or other entity, where their data can flow as well. So there's consent on multiple levels. And all of those things are things that our agencies certainly have in legal agreements when we're referring and navigating networks like these. So I would assume that, you know, I will let them speak for themselves, but in other models, you will see that.
Thank you there. And I just want to make sure that we have enough time. We do have a loaded Q&A a little bit later that we can chat a little further here, but I do not want to delay our next presenter. That's okay with everyone. We welcome the action in the chat, and really all of your feedback is well taken. Again, just really want to thank Alliance Chicago and partners for your great presentation. There was a question about timelines. I went back to the slide as a reference there. Thank you all so much. Really do appreciate the great discussion and engagement. So I will transition us into the next one. And again, we do have some time for continued discussion. Without further ado, I would love to hand over the mic to Eliel and Vishal at the University of Texas at Austin.
Thanks, Gabriela, and thanks everyone for being here. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you today a little bit about our work. And as you see here, my name is Eliel Oliveira at the Dell Medical School in the Department of Population Health. And I would like to keep moving. We have quite a bit to cover, so I'd love to hear your feedback. Next. So about the organization, Dell Med, as we call the school, has been around for not too long, only 2015. It was first medical school in nearly 50 years, building a large academic research top-tier university in the US. So we are new, but it's a very exciting environment, with a vision to revolutionize how people get and stay healthy. And so this work here aligns really well with the vision of the medical school. Our pilot is taking place in real settings here in Austin, but in a simulated environment in other two regions in the country. So that's one of the things we propose to ONC, that once we build the solution, we're going to be sharing that with other regions so that they can deploy, make sure that actually works for others. We'll pilot the closed loop referral for SNAP only, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We spent quite a bit of time understanding that from our providers. And I wish I had seen that slide from ONC on the framework because it sounds like it just described the story we went through in planning, development, testing, training, go live, and eventually like what are we going to do after this. So I love that flow. And so very focused on the SNAP referrals only. We also will test the Gravity project use case to make sure that we use those standards, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But in the end, ultimately, what we're doing, and we're trying to do a API, Firebase, replicable and usable by all parties, including patients. That's very important to highlight here that we wanted to make sure to be part of the process to test in real settings those standards. Next. So this is a list of our partners. As you can see on the top here, we have the 3 HIEs, one in Central Texas and New Orleans, in the Rio Grande Valley, which is South Texas. ONC, of course, that supports the project. The EMI advisors team that is our technical advisors, along with the Gravity project. And you see on the bottom, Find Help and Unite Us, which also provided us some support in how to understand the referral process. They are our partners. But then in the center, you see Integral Care, which is our local mental health authority for the region, and People's Community Clinic, which is one of our FQHCs. And finally, the Central Texas Food Bank, which at the beginning of the project, we didn't know we're going to work with them, because the first step was for us to meet with the clinics, with individuals, the community, and understand what are the key challenges that we want to address. And it turns out to be food insecurity. And the food bank then told us that 80% of what they do is SNAP referrals. They serve 21 counties in Central Texas, so they have a very large operation. So we hope that we're making a big difference with this pilot. Next. So these were the aims of the project. Very quickly, again, we will develop this open source referral system that we call FIRESHIP. And SHIP stands for Social Health Information Platform. Using these standards and FHIR APIs with our FQHC and local mental health authority. We want to demonstrate the Gravity use case package. And if you haven't read it, I'll highly recommend you Google it and take a look. It's great, describing a real use case and how the tools need to utilize the screening, diagnosis, planning, interventions standards to be able to allow applications to communicate effectively. And finally, we'll put together a toolkit and share the code with other regions so they can deploy and test this in a simulated environment. We couldn't do a real-time settings environment in 2-3 regions within the time frame that we had. Next. And so again, we are tier 3 pilot, and we have here a list of the use cases that I think Gabriela has gone over a little bit. Again, we are part of the LEAP project, and I put a line here on the top of our testing to just show you that we are behind schedule quite a bit. And what happened was in November, when we were ready to go live, we had some delays. And then when we got close to the holidays, we said, well, we are not going to start during the holidays because that's not going to go so well with the clinics busy. So let's do in January. And then January came, and the state of Texas came up with a new requirement for data security and cloud systems called TX-RAMP. And we had to comply with that first. And I say that, and it's very much like the FedRAMP cloud certification process. I say because I'm very proud of the work that we do with the state and the university in terms of securing our systems. By the time they go live, we know we are safe. So I'm putting some links here for those that are interested on that. Next. So here are our partners. Like I said, People's Community Clinic is our FQHC. They use NetSmart, and our local mental health authority, uses NextGen, and the local mental health authority uses NetSmart. The Central Texas Food Bank uses Salesforce. And one thing that I'll highlight here is that FIRESHIP was designed to integrate with any system. So it works alongside NextGen and NetSmart. And depending on the EHR, within the EHR as a Smart on Fire app. But in this case, it works seamless for the providers. We didn't necessarily make the integrations to Salesforce because it wasn't necessary at this point, because we're only going to recruit 100 patients for this pilot. So the Central Texas Food Bank was okay with that. But if we're going to scale this, we'll likely integrate also with Salesforce to minimize any logins to new systems, and we just connect all the dots. The patients will use a patient engagement technology called Fired Up. And if you haven't seen Fired Up before, I'm putting some links here in the chat. This is from a previous LEAP project with ONC that we built in 2019 to 2021. And basically was for the patients to get access to the whole medical record and be able to manage them and share with others, complying with the Cures Act. But then it allows us to add plugins to the app to do different things. And one of them is what we're going to be showing here today is a social determinants of health coordination with clinical and social providers. You see the HIEs here as well. They both use NextGen on their back end. Next. So these are the terminologies that we use for food insecurity. And you see here on the right that we use the questionnaire and questionnaire response for collecting the assessments, and then the clinical care IG, we use observation conditions, service requests, tasks, and procedures. Next. So this is high level, the architecture that we visualized early on and we're following, that we know that the systems that exist and are in place today are not FHIR ready. They're not maybe even API ready, honestly, when we started, as many of you know. So we believe that we need to layer systems around the ecosystem so that we can then test it out and make sure that we can have a full-time, real-time API-based platform that can demonstrate and help us understand what are the challenges that we're going to face in the future when these systems are ready. So FHIR chip, like I said, is layered into the EHRs as a web page or website for the food bank that can be integrated later. The patient's using Fired Up. The HIE is already FHIR API enabled because of the previous project that we did. And on the referral module, what we mean by that is that any referral management system can be plugged to this platform as long as they're following the FHIR API. So whenever a referral is made, we would be able to communicate with them. The goal here is that we are not trying to be really a referral management system. They're out there in the market, but they can plug to this platform and get everybody to discuss. So we can actually test this out and see what we can learn. And again, we only have one referral to be made here, right? So it's not referral to the Central Texas Food Bank. So we didn't need a whole referral platform to be connected to this to demonstrate the use case. Next. So very detailed about the workflow that we want to talk about a little bit is the step as it is today, what are the limitations we saw and the enhancements. And I'll highlight here before going through the details is that even though we are talking about a demo today and a demonstration, this is a 2-year project. We are close to the end of it, but a lot of the work was about engaging the community, meeting with our clinical partners, with the food bank, understanding the workflows to then get to develop the technology to be able to do what was necessary. So first step here is the community health workers traditionally meet with the patient, they collect the needs assessment in clinical settings. The patient doesn't necessarily see what they are collecting. They're basically being asked questions and they are filling out those questions in EHR or maybe on one of the referral systems. But we believe that it'll be a lot better if the patient actually complete the assessment themselves. And in this case here, it's going to be on the mobile app. And to us, that is very important for a key reason. There are many pros and cons that I can see people could be thinking about. But to us is that I may go to the clinic today and say that I don't have any challenges, but tomorrow morning when I leave, I may lose my job and be out of my house because I can't pay. How do I let everybody know in the community that I now have a need that needs to be addressed? So if I have the needs assessment in my mobile device, I can change, we can trigger, notifications to the right organizations to be able to take care of that problem. And additionally, the individual can share that assessment with other organizations, as you're going to see on the workflow. So the second step is that the food bank then places the referral to the SNAP if there is a need for SNAP. The patient doesn't necessarily know. They may print a paper saying, here's the phone number and email for you to talk to someone if they don't call you. But the patient is in the dark of what's going on for the most part. So by having Fired Up, we basically notify the patient in real time. They get those, we get all the 3 organizations in the loop in real time that they can communicate. The next step, the food bank traditionally would reach out to the patient by calling them or emailing them to try to make sure that they are actually eligible for SNAP. And they ask some basic questions like if you are a US citizen, if anyone in your family has a SNAP already or not. And if the patient don't answer, we see a lot of challenges there in terms of getting phone coordination and email coordination. Those questions are not answering, the process can't start. So we change that so that by the time that the referral is placed, the patient automatically gets the eligibility questions on their mobile device or the computer. Again, this is not just a mobile app, but they answer those eligibility questions themselves and the food bank can get the results in real time. Next. So when the food banks gets that, they can, and traditionally they would pick up the phone again and like, okay, let's schedule a meeting once they establish that you are eligible for SNAP referrals. And then again, the patients have to bring together all the documents that are going to be necessary for the application. And then we then decided, okay, how about we just get the patients to maybe upload the documents directly to the platform so the food bank can making sure that before they meet, all the documents are there, similarly to when you're applying for a mortgage. You can basically get all your documents in before you meet to complete the application. Then the next step, the food bank, places the application with the Medicaid in Texas, HHSC, electronically. And traditionally, the food bank would reassess the patient at that point because the assessment that was done in the clinic is not shared with the food bank necessarily, just because of licensing on the platforms that they are using. But since the patient completed the assessment on the mobile app, they can share those with the food bank if they didn't have it. But in this case, they have hardship, they'll be able to see the assessment as well and provide them some additional help. Finally, the food bank doesn't necessarily receive a response from Medicaid saying that this person was helped or not with SNAP. The patient does. The individual receives a letter at home physically. We haven't had a time, someone asking the previous presentation we had here, if we could integrate with Medicaid. The answer is yes, but there's just not enough time to do that for this pilot. We will be seeking to do that later on with Medicaid, where we would know who has been approved or not. But there would be no communication with the food bank. So what we're doing then instead is we send a message to the patient on a mobile app about 45 days and basically saying, did you get a letter from Medicaid? And if the answer is yes, we ask them to take a picture and upload to the system so the food bank can see what happened. And if it was decline, the reasons for the decline, so that they can follow up with the individual and maybe resolve those problems, get them back on the flow and get them the services. So next. And this is visually the same thing of what I just went through, but just with a bit more detail. The patient comes to the clinic, they are recruited, Fired Up. There's some processes that we have in place to make sure that they are who they say they are, validating their identity. They download the app, they install a plugin, because again, Fired Up was for medical records only, but once they install the plugin for the fire chip workflow, they get the needs assessment immediately on their device, they fill it up. Once they answer, the community health worker receives the response on their computer workstation alongside the EHR. They place the referral, the food bank receives the referral, they have to accept it. Because they may or may not have the capacity to accept all referrals. But once they accept, the patient gets two notifications on the app. One is to pick a date and time that it works for them to meet with the food bank. I mean, before all that happens, actually, they fill up the questions that I mentioned earlier of eligibility that the food banks then have to review, make sure that they are eligible. And once they say that they are eligible, then they're going to get a request to select a date and time to meet, which could be in person or could be online through a web meeting like this. And if they need a translator, which then the meeting will be for 2 hours, that gets added on the calendar of the food bank individual that's going to help them automatically in the patient's mobile app. So everybody's set to meet. If they meet, they collect the documents and send that to Medicaid, and then we follow up from there, like I mentioned earlier. So that covers the whole workflow, and I hope that's making sense. We can go to the next slide. I just want to prompt everybody on this screen here of what a fire chip looks like. On the left side, you see Fired Up. So Vishal is going to be demoing real time how everything's functioning. We have trained the users at this point, and they're ready to utilize. But Fired Up is on the left. On the right, he may show two other screens. One is this one that you're seeing is the food bank workflow on how they are seeing the referrals moving across. But there will be another one for the clinical providers, right? But we are not going to go there so much because they're just finishing the process, placing the referral, and everything mostly becomes between the patient and the food bank. With that, I'll turn to Vishal for the demo.
Hey everyone, my name is Vishal Brol. I am technical lead for this project at Dell Medical School. So when we started with this project, we were quite excited about after reading the Gravity use case package, and then when we started talking to our technology partners, we ran into limitations. We realized that we wanted to achieve the tier 3 specification, but we had limitation with our partner on the technology. This is what Eliel was mentioning, that we had to build this referral module for us to be able to achieve the full FHIR core APIs for as well as the SDOH implementation guide. We wanted to utilize that as well as the coding, the Gravity coding packages. We wanted to achieve that. One of our initial exercise when we started with the project was to, we spent quite a bit of time on this talking to the partner, was to really talk to them and understand their workflow. And I'm going to share my screen before. One second. My apologies, I missed to share my screen. So what you're looking at is this is actually the chart we actually put together. This is after talking to our community partners on the clinical side as well as on the CBOs. We basically came up this workflow after going through about 10 charts similar to this, interviewing them, and eventually we nailed down on this specific workflow that will follow. This chart really was our initial investigation to understand all the roles that system need to support, to the FHIR APIs, which we will need to utilize, and the resources which will become part of the project. So from once we learned from our partners, we were able to develop a platform which, and we tried to make sure that the communication is as much as is reliant on the standards, whether it's in coding. We built a system where any type of codes, in this case, the Gravity coding packages, we were able to import them and built in a scalable way that if there are any changes in future in those coding standard, we'll be able to import that, and system will be able to utilize those. On my screen, as Eliel mentioned in his the PowerPoint, the screenshot, what you're looking on the left side is actually the Fired App application. So there is a process that patient actually they have to follow before they actually get access to this system. Now, of course, we didn't want to change any workflows for our partners. So what we started doing was when we talked on the clinical side, we wanted a way to somehow integrate the platform within their workflow, and how Eliel has mentioned that we built this the sidekick, that's the part of the platform. So we were able to build an extension. Here I'm taking an example of OpenEMR. They use this extension to just read the information from the platform, which will read the information from the platform and automatically create the recruitment data for them. So in this case, all of that actually, it just got filled here. Once the recruitment is created, patient gets an invite code. Using the invite code, they're able to sign up into the application. Once the patient is signed up and in the application, this is the initial view that they will see, where they can actually view their full longitudinal data, which we integrated with the HIEs using the FHIR standard. So all the clinical data is being pulled using the FHIR APIs. Then the second was for the FHIR chip platform. Since we wanted to utilize the FHIR application, we built this application plugin. We, as you see at the bottom under My Apps, there's a plugin installed called FHIR Chip. Once a patient installs the FHIR Chip, on the platform, the screen on the right side, what you're looking at is the home page of the FHIR Chip application. This is the whole workflow will kick in at that time, the workflow which Aliel mentioned on the slide deck. Well, on the dashboard, when I'm looking at the clinical, let me actually zoom in my screen. I don't. So what you're looking at is the clinical view of the platform, and they could see the recent activity, notification, and task. These are all the referrals which that clinical partners may have placed with the CBO. So this is all the activities around those referrals. They of course will share an assessment with the patient, and they get notified with any interaction, even when the assessment is shared with the patient. And when the assessment is shared with the patient actually gets a notification. I'm not going to try to share right now, but I'll try to show you an interaction where a patient may have answered that. Okay, for example, there's a screener request here. So when patient gets a notification on the mobile app, their interaction would be that a task gets created. Again, we use the task resource, FHIR resource, which is what we store on the backend. Patient, when they open the task, they will. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I clicked on the wrong link. Screener requested. So what happens is in the background, patient will get a notification. They will once they get the notification, clicking on the notification, they will see the task. And the concept of task also comes from the FHIR standard. This is just to make sure that if by chance patient is not able to complete the task at that time, they may ignore the notification. This task system, basically, we are able to send a daily reminder to them and encourage them to complete the task as soon as possible. All the notification which patient have received. Now, I just want to show you, this was the clinical partners view. CBO view is similar, except that they're able to manage the referral. They can control the workflow of the referral. I'm going to take an example of this. So this is the CBO's view. There are multiple tabs here, activities, everything that has happened to the referral. So this is a test data where you can see that between 3 days, what activity has happened with the referral. There is a messaging. This actually came from when we talked to the partner. They wanted to make sure that they are able to communicate. CBO is able to communicate with this CHW. Sometimes they have a question about the referral. So what is the way for them to communicate? So this is actually a communication channel between the CBO, patient, or them as a group. The concept of tasks, any task which is associated with the referral, everything is controlled here. Then documents. These are any document. Mostly there's a workflow where they may, once they determine the eligibility, patient may have to request the documents. They can request the documents from the patient. When I click the upload documents, patient actually gets a notification. If you see on the left side, I can, as a patient, I can click on it. There will be a task similar to the workflow that we explained earlier. Clicking on that, it will take me to the screen where I can already see the documents which have been uploaded, and I can use my camera or browse any files on the system to submit that documentation. Forms, this is everything, assessment, information screener, anything which is around the referral will get tracked here. Appointments is again, when in the workflow, the CBO can request a patient to attend a meeting to complete the HHSC application. I think I already have a notification. Let me. So we actually partner with the Calendly to tap into the Exchange server to actually show the live availability of the CBO staff. And it automatically pulls their data and show it to the patient, and they can select the any slot from the availability and schedule a meeting. Once they confirm it, if you notice at the bottom, there is a bar which says, "Are you finished with this?" And yes, notify caseworker. So one of the things we realize, and when we talking to the partner, is like they don't want to unnecessarily keep getting notification just because they made a change on the referral. So this is basically a trigger. There's no notification goes to the partner until that patient has selected that I am done with that workflow, and then the CBO actually gets notified. So this is pretty much the workflow. We could probably go in detail. I know we don't have much time, so I'll stop here and I'll yield back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishal. I think back to the slides here and some accomplishments, we did identify some gaps on the referral coordination by studying that workflow. So that's, I think, why it's important also the ONC framework that we saw earlier, deep detailed study on the workflows. We validated the AIG data set. I think that was helpful, help refine the gravity standards in collaboration with Gravity. We identified some misalignments with the local needs assessment quite a bit, and I'll talk about that for a second. Insights into how Atel can help efficiently using the limited staff and capacity barriers that our FQHC and other organizations have. So that's a big thing for us. And again, I think I mentioned this earlier, the community engagement studios and clinical collaboration with the food bank and the clinical, it's very much a part of this project. And of course, disseminations such as this one. Next. Some lessons learned. The closed loop referral management will require individual case-by-case workflow analysis and technical development. So again, back to that framework that we saw earlier from ONC, I can't see magic, something that can just solve all clinical SDOH workflows. It's going to be community by community, case by case, for the most part, because the organization changes the different ways that people do things. Electronic systems that can support social services referrals are less prepared than we expected in terms of standards. So we thought that they were there much further along the way that when we started. And harmonization of these assessments is difficult than we expected. It's going to be a large national problem, in our opinion, that we probably want to avoid as soon as we can so that we can prevent major harmonization later in reporting. Next. So this is a little bit on the harmonization assessment of needs, just to give you a glimpse of what the problem that I'm talking about here. So this is just for one of the organizations that we collect assessments across the community, and we have several. And in this case here, they decided to maybe not use one of the standard ones nationally, like Prepare and others. They decided to do a simplified one that fit in one page so that they can collect that efficiently in clinics within their clinical setting. And that's great. But then when we try to match these out, here's what you see in the result of the 36 questions that we had in the assessment. Only 13 of them were a perfect match with the standards. 4 of them, maybe partially, we still need to talk to the clinical team to make sure that they match or not. But the great majority was not a match at all. And that, again, is one assessment. So just keep thinking about the fact that if we need to report across our region, we probably wouldn't be able to do very well because we can't connect the dots between the assessments done across organizations. Next. And so the path forward to us is to, share the code with and test with the other sites, integrate with Medicaid, like I mentioned earlier, so that we can get that real-time detailed back. We are working on probably developing a permanent supportive housing pilot starting this April. That's another 2-year project funded here in Austin, using the same platform. So it's just a different workflow and a different set of organizations and individuals. We are advancing our data governance. We talked about that in a ONC meeting recently, last month or so, in creating a community engagement work groups to then define what these problems are, what are the priority ones, and how we solve them across the community. Yes, the standardization of needs assessment, we need to push on that federally. And granular patient consent is another thing that we want to add to Fired Up next to be able to better manage patients' desires. Next slide. I think it's the last one. Our great team here. I think we have folks from all over the country in the team. I'm very thankful for their help. I'm talking here, but lots of the heavy work is done by this amazing group. So thank you so much. I think most of them are here. And there's some reference for you all. Thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I will note, sometimes our presentation time is just not enough to the rich information received, and just want to thank you to all of our presenters. It has been really learning experience, enhanced learning experience, hearing about your trajectory, your journey. I want to thank you all. I know we have just about 5 minutes for questions. I think the majority of the questions received via the chat have been answered. I've been trying to monitor them as best as I could. So in the next 5 minutes or so, we'll love for our audience, either would like to unmute themselves to speak up or share some final thoughts or questions. I will know, and Eliel, I'm sure that, we could always use more help to discuss the harmonization of assessment questions. That is something that we hope to discuss further with a larger group. I know one of our takeaways from our TA sessions was about, continuing the conversation with the rest of the team and community at Gravity, because it is something that we know it's not just happening in your area, right? It is a national issue, as you pointed out. So let me open up the line here, and just really, really thankful for everyone's support in the chat and being able to answer questions as you see them. Would anyone like to ask a question live?
Sure. This is Courtney Baldridge from US Aging. I had asked, I'd love to better understand that back-end integration for those that aren't fire enabled, because many CBOs are not, and what that looks like.
Yeah, a good question. And I think the way that we have strategized to do that across our community, and we couldn't cover that here, but and this addresses also some of the questions that we had earlier about agreements. We did decide as a community to have our health information exchange as the central place for data. And what that means, we can leverage agreements, but we can also leverage the capability of aggregating data from other sources. So the platform that we're talking about here, SHIP, was designed with the idea that it could absorb data from pretty much anything or anywhere. So that's one way to do it. The other simple way is just workflow wise, like Vishal was demonstrating here, that integration with the EHR. The same integration could happen with Salesforce in several different ways that we have developed the technology to do so. And by just having the ID of the user that the CBO is talking to, and SSO or single sign-on to our platform, we basically integrate in their workflow, making it simple for them to not have another system to look at. And depending on the use case, the data integration may not be that complex, where a lot of data needs to flow centrally to be then visualized. But again, I'll just keep it that there, because SHIP has a lot more than what we've shown today. The idea of it was to integrate everything centrally and then build dashboards to help with the coordination. And we didn't go there to show those dashboards, but that's another piece of what we do constantly with the community here, is to design those dashboards to help community health workers, to help the CBOs and so on and so forth. But the data comes to one central place, the health information exchange.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know we are coming here close to time. Just taking a quick look at the chat here, and I do see some discussion around the barriers with long encoding and then agreement there on Sarah's behalf. No, perfect. And I know it's been a lot of information. We do want to take a bit of a pause and ensure that all community members have the latest information on Gravity updates and announcements. So just wanted to share some quick updates with everyone, and there will be links in the chat as well. So there is a health affairs request for abstracts on housing and health. For anyone interested, the abstracts are due on April 17. And then CDC, there's a new CDC NOFO on innovative cardiovascular health program. There will be a listening session coming up, and the applications for that specific NOFO are due on May 23rd. So again, the links are in the chat, and we'll make them part of the follow-up email as well, so you have them handy. And really want to extend the invite and mention that our Gravity Project technical bi-weekly meetings are back, and this is really a specific forum to digest and talk more about the Gravity Project Fire IG. So this is really the deep dive. You're going to have many technical experts on the call. So every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. and they just started yesterday. So we just want to give you all the heads up that this will be the specific forum to triage technical questions, and the SULIP channel is also another avenue to support engagement and questions there. Our Gravity Project Pilots Affinity Group Confluence site is filled with many resources, and we really want to give you the heads up there. We update this, we upload our presentations and recordings, so it is a good resource to keep handy. And for next steps, and I know we have just a few minutes here, as mentioned, our meetings will continue with the support of Civitas. So the new meeting series has gone out. As you can see, here is the schedule and what we have in the house for everyone, and starting in April until October, with no meeting in August. So we're just very, very excited. I want to give kudos to the team for putting this together. And again, this invite has gone out. If you have not received it for any reason, please email us. We do have a new email address for some of you that may not be aware. It's gravityproject@hl7.org. So this is really important to provide you an update with. And we are so excited to continue this journey of piloting and learning from each one of you. If you have any questions, if you want to sign up to get, this invites, announcements, make sure you sign up on Confluence. You have our contact information. Myself, Gabriela Gonzalez, as well as Heidi, are supporting this wonderful forums for learning with each other. And without further ado, I want to just thank you all for your participation and discussion, servers, pilot partners, and partners for being part of this national standard implementation process. We are very grateful for all of you. The chat has been on fire, so we're going to ensure that we share some of the resources as well that were shared with the team. And I'm trying to see, perfect. I don't see any last minute questions, but really just want to give a round of applause to our presenters. The Gravity Project is made possible by all of your support. We encourage a sponsorship as well as opportunities to collaborate. Please follow us on social media. We have our handles here, and we want to thank you all for joining today's presentation. Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch with the follow-up. Anyone, I think we have 1 minute to spare. Any pressing questions before we go? All right. No, perfect. Thank you so much. Again, appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.